So there's been a lot of discourse on NBA Twitter recently about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being overrated, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. I saw a thread titled Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is overrated, and a lot of people saw it, a lot of people agreed with it, and a lot of people started calling people who thought he was top 5, top 10 a casual. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I've supported him a lot on the channel, and in my top 100 rankings video, I believe I actually had him right in the top 10, which some people, we're not going to name names, but some people thought that was egregious, and I kind of want to talk about it today. So I'm going to go through the entire thread. We're going to look at each point, and at the end of the video, we're going to be asking the question, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander overrated? And I'm going to be 100% honest with what I have to say. The first point is that Shai averages 10 free throws per game, which is 4th in the NBA. He should join the Sixers. Haha. He then shows a screenshot where the Suns and Thunder played, and Shai had like 16 free throws and the Suns had 17. It was a lot about the officiating going on regarding the Suns, but that was pretty normal during the season. The thing I hate about this conversation is there are a lot of players that do average a lot of free throws per game, and we talk about them as some of the best players in the game because some of them really are. For example, is Luka Doncic overrated? Is Joel Embiid overrated, which is the most popular case? Is Giannis overrated? Despite Giannis not being the best free throw shooter, is he now overrated because he takes so many free throws? Or what about Damian Lillard? Is he now overrated? Like, this is such a stupid fucking thing to talk about. If you look at the top 20 of free throws attempted, you're going to see that most of these players, in fact all in the top 20, are the number one option on their team. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the number one option is going to try to attempt the most free throws, is going to try to get the most points. It's a pretty normal thing. But Shai is in the top 5 of free throw shooting, so I'm gonna guess he's gonna try to point out the fact that Shai is a quote-unquote free throw merchant, which we'll get to that. His second point is that nobody ever mentioned Shai's flopping. He didn't get a single finger laid on him, and he acts like he got shoved. I think flopping can be subjective on, oh, I think this player flops a lot or that player flops a lot. I will say though, in this clip, it definitely doesn't look good for Shai, so I'm gonna agree with him on that. But again, we could say that for so many damn players. Like, it's a pretty normal thing. I hate that it's a normal thing, but that's just the truth. But I guess Bron is overrated, and so is Luka apparently. Obviously, you could tell why that's a stupid fucking thing to say, but regardless, let's move on to point 3. Now, this one is what someone argued was his best point, but he said number 3, his points per game when he has 0 free throws in a game glorified James Harden, which we can see in this stat that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has scored 9.6 points per game when making exactly 0 free throws in his career. Now, you might have just saw that point and you're like, Spex, wrap it up, the video's over, bro, take your L, Shai's overrated, I'm out, bye. And I'd agree with you if we didn't add a little bit of context, because you know that's one of my favorite words to say on this channel, because Shai has had 33 games where he's had 0 free throws in a single game, and 25 of those were in his rookie season. Mind you, in his rookie season, he averaged about 11 points per game. So that number doesn't look as bad when you consider a majority of the games were in his rookie year, which a lot of people failed to mention. But you know what? Since we're using out of context, then it turns out Nikola Jokic is overrated, because if we go by that same stat, then he averages 10.7 points per game. And with Steph Curry, he averages about 15.6. Do you see how fucking stupid this is to say? His fourth point was James Harden 2.0 in front of our eyes, which he just proceeds to show a bunch of clips of Shai shooting free throws. Like, I could do that for literally just about any player in the NBA, so I'm just gonna move on. This is dumb as hell. His fifth point, which I think is pretty interesting to look at, is he said he's not even the best player on his team, which he proceeds to show highlights of Josh Giddey. Here's my thing. I love Josh Giddey, and I think he's one of the most underappreciated players in the NBA. I've said it before. However, as much as I love Josh Giddey, and I think most Thunder fans could say this, he's not the best player on the team. And even if, let's say, Shai got traded today, or I don't know, he just didn't exist, I think a lot of people would say, oh, maybe Chet's the best player on the team, or even J-Dub. And if those two weren't there, then yeah, I guess you could argue it's Josh Giddey. I think Josh Giddey does a lot of great things. For example, he's one of the best playmakers in the NBA that does not get appreciated as much as he should. I also do think that all around Josh Giddey is a great player, but I think Shai's scoring overall is something that Josh Giddey can never really touch, and he is outmatched by that. Now, to be fair, Shai is the number 1 option on this team, so he's obviously going to get the most opportunities. But what if Josh Giddey was the number 1 option on his team? Do I think he would be just as good as Shai? Well, I don't know, but that's what hypotheticals are for. Now, the 6th and final claim is that Ant and SGA is really a debate question mark. Playoff numbers show that Ant is statistically better. Now, of course, this looks really bad for Shai, but I think we need to once again add fucking context, because Shai has made the playoffs in 2 seasons, and ironically, they were back-to-back. In 2018 on the Clippers and 2019 on the Thunder. And in those 2 seasons, not only was he not the number 1 option, he was a young player who just started to barely get opportunities. And his stats definitely represent that, because in his rookie year, he averaged about 14 points per game in the playoffs. In his second year, he averaged about 16 points per game. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards, in his 2 playoff runs, he was clearly the #1 option and clearly the best player on his team. Now some of you might say, oh, that's subjective, especially Shai's opportunities. Like, come on, he got some opportunities. But let's look at the field goals attempted, because that's a stat y'all don't want to look at. Shai's field goals attempted in his first 2 playoff runs were 10 field goals per game and 13 field goals per game. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards averaged 18 field goals per game and 23 field goals per game. So Anthony Edwards had damn near, I said damn near, the field goals attempted per game compared to Shai. Oh shit, Anthony Edwards is going to average more points. I'm not saying Anthony Edwards is a shot chucker. He did take a lot of shots, but he also made a lot of them, hence why he averaged like 28 points per game. But stop taking stats out of context, because it makes the people that actually analyze stats look pretty bad. Now, that's basically the end of the thread, so let's go to my verdict. I think his best point in the entire thread was the Shai flopping one, but again, that can be subjective to most people, because let's face it, a lot of players in the NBA flop. It's a pretty well-known thing at this point. But the rest of this thread, with all due respect, was absolute fucking garbage. Now, I've seen some people try to say that Shai, just because he averaged over 30 points per game last year, is now a top 5 player. Do I agree with that? Fuck no. I think Shai is a top 10 player, and if he's not top 10, he's right around in that bubble. He's fighting for it. But there's an argument that's not even just about Shai, it's about the quote-unquote free throw merchant allegations that a lot of players get. I hate the fact that we call players this and we try to say, oh, they're not as good because they take a lot of free throws. And if you're a Shai hater, you're gonna hate this point. But if Shai is overrated, then James Harden is overrated. Then Giannis is overrated. Then Luka is overrated. Again, do you see how dumb of a claim that is? So if you cannot tell by me defending Shai for over 90% of the video, yeah, I think this guy's full of shit and Shai is not overrated. Also, this could be a hot take within itself, but I think next year Shai is gonna be in the MVP conversation. Now, do I think he's gonna win it? Well, it honestly depends on the OKC Thunder. If the whole team plays like a well-balanced oiled machine, or whatever the fuck the saying is, then yeah, I think this team is gonna be special, and I think that could correlate to Shai winning MVP. Even if Shai had the stats to, I do think it's going to, at the end of the day, come down to his team success, which unfortunately that's just the way it is, but it does make sense in some ways. Because no, I don't think a play-in team should have the MVP on their team. I'm interested though this season to see how Shai does, because this is the first season he's ever averaged over 30 points per game, and now this year we're gonna see, can he replicate that? If he can replicate that, I expect people to talk about him as a free throw merchant once again, but in reality, I think it's just gonna prove my point that yes, he is a top 10 player. Also, quick little disclaimer before anyone does anything stupid: if you want to go look at the thread, be my guest. You can look at it, talk about it, whatever you want to do. But don't go harassing this guy just because I said his thread is dumb as fuck and I think he doesn't know what he's talking about. That doesn't mean you should harass him, or I don't know, just talk bullshit. I feel like most of you already understand that concept, and at the end of the day, it is just basketball, but I had to say that for the couple people that probably thought they were gonna do something. Anyways, if you guys want to see my way too early NBA predictions that I made a couple days ago, you should check out the video. The video is on the screen right here.